Hey everyone, this is Norbert, and welcome back to another Saturday morning block party in-between. For those of you who don't know, an in-between episode is a short piece of content that I do all by myself in between full episodes of Saturday morning block party. We're going to have a full episode next Saturday, so until then, sit tight and enjoy this in-between. The idea for this episode came to me back a few months ago when DreamWorks Home just came out. I've got a lot of mixed feelings about that movie. On one hand, it was really heartwarming to see all those pictures of little black girls with great afros standing next to pictures of the the main character, Tip. But on the other hand, Bazinga! So yeah, I might talk about that later. But anyway, I was on Tumblr, as I am too often, and I saw this post going around talking about Home and all the great reasons you should see it. And one of them was really interesting. One of the reasons was interesting. It was that this movie does not demonize single mothers. Yeah, that's weird to me. And by that I mean, this is really something, one of those many things that Tumblr just decided to invent. This notion that single mothers in media are always demonized and trashed, while as long as the kid doesn't starve, everyone kisses the ground the single father walks on. And that's just not true. Growing up in the early 2000s, there were a good amount of shows with not only single mothers but single fathers too, and just about all of them were pretty positive characters. The only ones I can think of that could be even remotely interpreted as demonizing single mothers, which I don't even agree that they do this. I just think, okay, these are the closest you'll get, are Nelson Muntz's mom and Cleo's drunk foster mother from Clone High. And even those, Nelson's mom, Nelson's whole family is terrible. That's his premise. He's supposed to be the white trash trailer kid. And his mom not being single wouldn't change a thing. She's a horrible person regardless of her relationship status. And the same goes for Cleo's drunk stepmom from Clone High. Not stepmom, foster mom. Even after she got together with Toots, the blind jazz musician that was Joan of Arc's foster father, her personality stayed the same. She still drunk a lot, so her personality had nothing to do with her being single. Anyway, from the 90s to the early to mid 2000s, there were just a lot of shows with single parents going on, and it's not like anime where it's expected for at least one of the parents to be gone, if not both. In most cartoons, it's generally both parents being there. It's a nuclear family, but it feels like there was a real surge of single parent households in cartoons during this period. Let me give you some examples. For the mothers, we have Lois Boutley from As Told by Ginger, Mrs. Tonatini from The Weekenders, we have the Commander from Moya in Space. And by the way, those are all the parents of the main characters. We also have Mama from Johnny Bravo. We have Ricochet's mom from Lucha Lucha. There's Professor Wakeman from My Life as a Teenage Robot. And last mother I'm going to mention is Henry's mom from Kablam. And on the single dad side, we have, wow, that's single dad side, that sounds really sad. Anyway, we have Goofy from Goof Troop and a Goofy movie, Extremely Goofy Movie, and the extended Goofy universe with showing House of Mouse. And we have Raymundo from Rocket Power, and he actually got married at the end of his series. Oh, just like Lois Boutley from As Told by Ginger. And who else? Chaz Finster from Rugrats, Chucky's dad. He also got married in Rugrats in Paris. We also have the professor from Powerpuff Girls, even though in the series, at least I don't think they never explicitly called him their father or dad, but I know they did in the movie, and you know, he was obviously taking that father role. and he did create them after all. We also have Rodolfo Rivera, excuse my horrible Mexican-Spanish pronunciation, he's also known as White Pantera from El Tigre. And I guess Manny Rivera's mother could be considered demonizing single mothers if you really, really wanted to be dishonest and get into an argument. But anyway, there's also Professor Membrane from Invader Zim. There's also the dad from Pelswick. Oh, and by the way, if you want to learn more about Pelswick, I did an in-between on its creator, John Callahan. That's a lot of single parents in the time span of, 10 years? And this isn't like anime where almost every single protagonist is missing at least one parent. And if you know the shows I was talking about, you'll notice that I wasn't scraping the bottom of the barrel for side characters to be single parents. These are, if not the parents of the protagonist, they're really important to the story. So yeah, that's a lot of single parents. Why is that? Well, I don't know how many of you listen to the Cracked podcast, but they kind of looked at this in an episode about orphans in pop culture. And their theory was that the time no-fault divorce came about, a lot of divorces happened, and that affected the people who would go on to make our books and movies and TV shows. They grew up in single-parent households, so they decided to make media where either one or both of the parents were missing. And they were talking about stuff that came out earlier, like in the 80s or 70s, or maybe not the 70s, but at least earlier than what I'm talking about. So it seems like this is the younger tail end of that generation of children who grew up in single-parent households, and they decided to make cartoons where people lived in single-parent households. And if all these creators didn't grow up in a single-parent household, I'm sure they grew up with friends or cousins who did grow up in single-parent households, and it was something that affected them internally, made them want to create this. I remember reading a little story. I'm not 100% sure it's true. I'm pretty sure, but not 100%. But it was about the Weekenders and how it got approved, how it got greenlit to be on Disney. And Doug Langdale was given a pitch in the boardroom, and one of the executives misheard him. Doug Langdale said that he was raised, R-A-I-S-E-D, by his mother, but the executive heard that he was raped by his mother, R-A-P-E-D. And he decided, oh, this guy's had a tough life, let's give him a break, let's do a show. And that was funny to me, because if you listen to the fans of the Weekenders and even people who casually watch the show or analyze this show, everybody loves Mrs. Tonatini. They all love how great of a parent she is. The advice she gives is really sound, and she listens to her kid. And this was a really healthy portrayal of just a situation where two people got married and they don't hate each other, but it just didn't work out, and they have to manage life after that, where they have a son. We even see an episode where Tino's dad comes to visit because Tino lives in California and his dad lives in New York. And you see how difficult it is for these two to really connect, because they want to see each other, but they just can't. And when they do come see each other, they really don't know what to do. And I think it says a lot about how at least these creators view single-parent households, and maybe towards how their generation views single-parent households, that most of these characters that I've listed off are on the really high end of great cartoon parents. Like, I've already talked about Mrs. Tonatini, but there's also, you'd have to really, I don't want to go through every single one of these characters, but they're all really good. I remember one that stuck out to me was Lois Foutley from My Soul by Ginger. There was one episode where she temporarily lost her job because she was on strike. She was a nurse, and she decided that to make ends meet, she would start a little maid service. Not maid, but cleaning service. And she was teaching Ginger how, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. There's no shame in honest work. And other really good characters, other things that people can really deeply relate with. Of course, there's Goofy and Chucky's dad and Raymundo. It's just overwhelmingly positive how these single parents are portrayed. And even then, the other parents, like their spouses, either ex-spouses or deceased, I don't think any of them are ever portrayed as particularly bad. Like I know in shows like 2.5 Men or The Critic, not to knock The Critic, but they show the ex as just a horrible person. And yeah, that does happen. That's one reason people get divorced, because one of them is just terrible. But you didn't really see that in cartoons. And I think that's a reflection of how these people view single-parent relationships, single-parent households. And I'm a person who grew up in a single-parent household, and it was really nice to see all of these single-parent households. Well, I'm saying that a lot. And I don't know, I think the divorce might have affected me worse if I hadn't been so immersed in media that shows that, oh, this is just a normal thing. People can still be happy. It can still be a positive experience. If these cartoons weren't around, I think it would have been much harder for me to process the situation. So these creators really did a good job, and it's just one of those things where you gotta realize cartoons are a reflection of people and they can have important impacts. And that's pretty much all I have to say on single parents and cartoons. There's just one thing I want to get off my chest. What is wrong with you, Simpsons? Okay, Milhouse's parents gets divorced. That's fine. Kirk is a loser. When he's single, that's fine. They get back together. That's less fine, but I can deal with it. And now we realize that they're cousins in canon. Yes, Milhouse's parents are cousins. And that's it. I know I left out a lot of single parent characters, so go to the comments or send me a message at SaturdayMorningBlockParty.tumblr.com or write on our Facebook wall or our Twitter. If I missed out on your favorite, let me know. Who do you like? Because I really want to know. Thank you for listening. You can find us on SaturdayMorningBlockParty.com and social media. You can check the description for all of that. And I'll see you next week.